Twilight Fables, where stories you thought you knew are pulled from the shadows and given new flesh. Tonight's tale is about betrayal, a silenced princess, and a loyal horse whose whispers do not fade with death. This is the Goose Girl, skin for skin. The princess had been raised for a future that was not hers to choose. From the moment she first learned to walk, every step was guided toward her destiny. She would leave her homeland, marry a prince she had never seen, and join two kingdoms through her body and her name. But she was not afraid. She had grown up in a castle of pale stone and soaring towers, where the wind whistled against high windows and gardens bloomed beneath her chamber. She had walked among the roses at dawn, laughing with her maids, her dreams bright and unbroken. She trusted the future as a child trusts sunlight to return each morning. When the time came, her mother, the queen, prepared her with trembling hands. Though she was a woman of iron reputation, her voice shook as she kissed her daughter's brow. "You must be brave," she said, and pressed 3 gifts into her hands. The first was a charm, small enough to hide in her palm, tied with a thread of gold. "This will guard you from harm when your courage falters," her mother promised. The second was a silver cup, shining with a strange, cool glow. No matter how empty it seems, it will never run dry. You will not starve nor thirst as long as you keep it close. And the third was not an object, but a companion. "Take Falada," her mother said. "He will carry you as faithfully as he has carried me, and his words will comfort you when loneliness presses too hard." For Falada was no ordinary horse. His eyes were deep and dark, like wells that drew secrets from the earth. His voice, yes, his voice, was known only to the royal bloodline. He had whispered wisdom in the queen's ear when she was young, and now he would guide her daughter on the long road toward her fate. The princess embraced her mother, feeling the crown upon her hair press like a weight she did not yet understand. She mounted Falada, her loyal maid at her side, and together they set out with wagons laden with chests, silks, and gifts for her bridegroom's kingdom. Among the treasures was also humbler fare, cages of geese, their soft bodies shifting and hissing as they were herded along the road. The princess did not think much of the geese. They were noisy, silly creatures, their wings beating against wicker cages, their eyes sharp but empty. They were tribute, nothing more, the kind of creatures one ignored. She would remember them differently later. At first, the journey was full of light. The sun poured across the countryside, scattering gold on the fields and painting the road with warmth. The princess sang to herself, braiding flowers into the maid's hair. Falada told her tales of faraway lands, places where rivers gleamed like silver chains and mountains stood like ancient kings. But as the days wore on, the brightness waned, the road grew harsher the weather colder. They entered forests where the pines crowded too close, their shadows falling like spears across the path. The princess noticed the maid watching her, eyes glittering with something she could not name. Envy. The maid grew crueler with each passing mile. She no longer fetched water without complaint, nor did she brush the princess's hair at night. Her words became sharp, her laughter cold. Falada warned the princess to keep her heart guarded, but she only smiled sadly. "She has been with me since childhood," the princess said. "She would not betray me." But betrayal was already growing in the maid's breast, like a thorn beneath the skin. It happened on the 7th day. The caravan slowed as they passed through a lonely stretch of road. The trees bent low, their branches clawing the sky, and no bird sang. The men-at-arms rode far ahead, their armour flashing out of sight, leaving the two girls nearly alone. The maid's face hardened. She drew close to the princess and hissed, "Get down!" The princess blinked. "What?" "Down," the maid snapped, her hand closing around the dagger at her belt. Her eyes glittered like black stones. The princess slid from Falada's saddle, her heart pounding. "Why are you? "You will give me your crown," the maid said. "Your gown, your jewels, your name. From this moment forward, I am the princess, and you are nothing." The world tilted. The princess stared, unable to breathe. You cannot. "If you speak of this," the maid said, pressing the dagger close to her throat, "you will die." The geese in their cages stirred, their wings beating, feathers spilling into the road. The princess felt the sound of their hissing crawl along her spine. With trembling hands, she removed her crown. She let her gown slip from her shoulders, its embroidery glinting faintly in the dim light. Piece by piece, her identity was stripped away, until she stood in her shift like a servant. The maid smiled and dressed herself in finery, as if the stolen clothes were always meant for her skin. "From now on," she said, "you are no princess. You are a goose girl." And so it was. Yet Falada remained. The horse stamped his hooves, his eyes burning as if he knew the truth. "Do not accept this," he whispered into the princess's mind. "Do not bow to her cruelty." But the false bride was not blind. She saw the horse's gaze, the way he bent his head close to the princess, as if sharing secrets, and she feared him. That night, when the wagons halted in the shelter of the forest, she went to the men. She smiled with her new royal lips and said, "The princess no longer has need of her horse. Kill him." The princess begged. She fell to her knees in the dirt, her hands clasped before her. "Please," she whispered, "please. He is all I have left." But the men obeyed the one they believed was mistress. Steel flashed, Falada's body crumpled, his noble eyes going glassy. The forest was still but for the rustling of the geese, their wings clattering against the cages, their hiss swelling into something almost like a laugh. The princess pressed her face into her hands. Something inside her cracked. The false bride, satisfied, commanded that Falada's head be hung upon the great gate of the goose yard, so that the true princess would be forced to see him every day of her new, lowly life. The castle where they arrived was vast, its walls black and ancient, its towers clawing the clouds. The false bride was welcomed with trumpets, the true princess shunted aside. She was given a rough wool dress, her hair left uncombed, her hands dirtied with labour, and she was set among the geese. Every morning she drove them from their cages, their webbed feet slapping against stone, their wings brushing against her arms. They hissed when she passed, their eyes sharp as glass. She thought she saw something moving behind their gaze, a darkness that had not been there before. At first, she believed grief had made her see illusions, but then the whispers began. On the first night, she crept to the gate where Falada's head was nailed high upon the wood. The moonlight draped silver across his face, his dead lips slack. She pressed her hands to the gate and whispered his name. For a long while there was nothing, only the wind, the rustle of feathers, the uneasy hiss of the geese, and then, "Princess," her breath caught. His lips had not moved, yet the word had entered the air, curling like smoke. She stumbled back, staring. His glassy eyes seemed to glint. "Do not despair," Falada said, his voice like water poured into an empty well. "I have not left you. I see all. I remember all. I can guide you still." Her hands trembled. "But how?" "Skin for skin," Falada whispered. "Blood for blood. If I am fed, I will grow strong. If I am fed, I can guard you." Her mouth went dry. "Fed?" "The geese," he murmured, and the word shivered through the air. "Spill their blood upon the earth. Only then may I keep you safe. Only then may you reclaim what is yours." The princess stumbled back, horror twisting her gut. "No, I cannot. I will not." The geese stirred in their cages. Their wings beat once, twice, as if echoing the demand. Their eyes caught the moonlight, unblinking, watching her. That night, she dreamed of feathers filling her mouth, choking her breath. She woke to find the geese circling her, closer than before, their eyes gleaming with something that did not belong to them. And through the hissing, she heard Falada again, his voice dripping like rain through stone. "Skin for skin, blood for blood. The throne will not return unless I am fed." The princess pressed her palms over her ears, but his voice seeped through bone and skin, sinking into her heart. She knew then that she was not the only one he spoke to. The geese were listening, and they were waiting. The days bled together in the shadow of the castle. Every morning, the true princess woke in her coarse bed of straw, her fingers stiff with cold, her hair tangled, her pride in tatters. She had once slept upon silken pillows, beneath the painted ceiling of her mother's palace. Now she rose to the honking of geese and the damp stink of their droppings. Her hands, once soft and unblemished, were raw with work. She carried buckets of water, swept the yards, scrubbed filth from stones, and all the while the geese pressed around her, brushing her skirts, hissing at her heels. She tried to ignore their eyes, but she could not. They glimmered strangely, catching the light like wet glass, always watching, always waiting. Sometimes, when the wind swept through the yard, their feathers lifted as though they were all one creature breathing together. The Goose Girl, they called her now. No one knew she was a princess. No one saw the crown stolen from her head, the dagger pressed to her throat, the betrayal that had gutted her life. No one, save Falada. Each morning, as she drove the geese through the gates into the meadow, she passed beneath him. His head hung there, nailed high upon the wood, the sunlight painting his lifeless eyes, and each time his lips parted. "Princess," he whispered, "do you hear me?" She would bow her head as though in prayer and murmur, "I hear you. You must do as I say." Falada urged, "Take their blood. Only then can I keep you safe." Her throat tightened. "I cannot. They are innocent." "Innocent." Falada's voice was low, almost mocking. "They are not as they were. They are mine now. Do you not feel it when they press close? Do you not see their eyes? Feed me through them, and I will be strong." She turned her face away, fighting the urge to weep. "I will not." "Then remain as you are," he said, his tone bitter. "Remain nothing, a goose girl forever." The meadow lay beyond the castle walls, a sweep of grass bordered by the forest. Here she would sit upon a stone and watch the geese wander, their white feathers bright against the green. It should have been peaceful, but it was not. The geese no longer behaved like common birds. They circled her in patterns too deliberate, their honking rising in eerie rhythm. When she plucked grass, they drew near. When she lifted her head, they froze as one. At times, she thought she heard whispers curling beneath their noise, syllables too faint to catch, but enough to chill her bones. Once, as she dozed in the sunlight, she awoke to find them all staring, every neck stretched long, every head tilted, every eye locked upon her. The silence was so complete, she thought she had gone deaf, and then one hissed. The sound spread but like a ripple, one after another, until it rose into a chorus, not animal, not human, but something between. She fled back to the castle, trembling. At night, the whispers grew worse. Lying in her straw bed, she would hear wings against the shutters, the soft scrape of beaks at the wood. She dreamed of feathers falling like snow, of rivers red as rust, of Falada's voice filling her skull. "Skin for skin," he crooned. "Blood for blood." Once she dreamed that the geese surrounded her, pressing their soft bodies against her, until she could not move, could not breathe. She tried to scream, but her mouth filled with feathers. She woke gasping, feathers clinging to her lips, and yet when she spat them out, they melted away like mist. She no longer knew what was dream and what was waking. The false bride, meanwhile, flourished. She sat beside the prince in silk gowns, her hair gleaming with jewels. She walked the halls of the castle with her head high, smiling with her stolen lips. None questioned her, none doubted her. The Goose Girl would sometimes glimpse her across the courtyard, and her heart would twist with rage. But the dagger's memory burned still against her throat. She dared not speak. The prince looked at her only once, when he passed the goose yard. His eyes brushed over her, a servant, nothing more, and then moved on. It was then she realized Falada was right. Without his aid, she would remain nothing, forgotten, erased. But to gain his aid, she would have to pay his price. It happened on a grey morning. The geese pressed too close, their wings brushing her arms, their hissing constant. She stumbled, spilling the pail of water she carried. One goose stretched its neck and snapped at her wrist. The bite was small, no worse than a pinch, but when she jerked away, she saw blood bead upon her skin. The geese went still, all of them, every head turned, every eye fixed upon the tiny drop of red. The air seemed to shiver, heavy with hunger, and from the gate Falada's whisper rose, stronger than before. "Yes," he said, "feed me." The blood slid down her wrist and fell into the dirt. The geese hissed as one, their wings beating, their bodies trembling. It was not the sound of anger, it was the sound of satisfaction. And in that moment, Falada's voice filled her head, louder, sharper, dripping with power. "Do you feel it?" he whispered. "One drop is enough. I am closer now. The more you give, the stronger I become. Feed me, princess, feed me, and you will rise again." Her knees weakened. She pressed her hand against her skirt, trying to wipe the blood away, but the stain had already sunk into the ground. The geese would not stop watching. That night, she could not sleep. Falada's voice echoed in her skull, wrapping around her thoughts like chains. "You must choose," he murmured. "Remain nothing, or claim what is yours. Skin for skin, blood for blood." The next day, she carried a small knife. Her hand shook as she led the geese into the meadow. She told herself she would not use it. She told herself she only carried it for protection. But when one of the geese wandered too near, brushing its wing against her leg, she felt a pressure in her chest. Falada's voice whispered, "Now." Her hand moved before she could stop it. The blade nicked the goose's skin, just beneath the feathers. A bead of red swelled and fell to the earth. The goose flapped its wings, but made no cry. The others pressed closer, their hissing low, their eyes gleaming. The ground seemed to drink the drop, and Falada laughed It was not the warm, noble laugh she remembered from her childhood. It was hollow, sharp, like bones clattering together. "Yes," he crooned. "Yes, more." Her stomach turned. She dropped the knife, stumbling back. The geese did not flee. They clustered around the wound, their beaks dipping, their wings rustling. When they lifted their heads, their eyes glowed faintly, pale as the moon. She fled, tears stinging her eyes, but she could not stop. The next day, she told herself it had been a mistake. She told herself she would not do it again. And yet, when Falada whispered, when the geese pressed close, when their eyes gleamed too bright, she faltered. Her knife flashed once more, and another drop fell. Day by day, she gave in. A scratch here, a prick there, never enough to kill, never enough to silence, only enough to feed. The geese did not grow weaker, they grew stronger. Their feathers darkened, their wings beat heavier, their hissing grew deeper. At night, she dreamed of their voices speaking in unison, chanting words she could not understand. And Falada, Falada grew louder. "Do you feel it, princess? I am returning. I am more than bone and memory now. With each drop, I gather strength. Soon, I will have the power to set you free." But freedom did not feel like what he promised. It felt like a chain tightening around her throat. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, the prince came to the meadow. He was handsome, with golden hair and eyes bright as flame. The Goose Girl froze when she saw him, clutching her knife behind her back. The geese hissed, forming a barrier between them and him. He frowned. "Strange," he murmured. "The geese do not behave so with anyone else. Only with you." She said nothing. She dared not. The prince tilted his head, studying her. For a heartbeat, she thought he saw her, truly saw her. But then his expression softened, and he shook his head. "You tend them well," he said, and turned away. Her heart ached. She wanted to cry out, to tell him everything, but Falada's voice coiled in her mind. "Do not speak," he warned. "Not yet. Not until you have fed me enough to make me strong. Then I will tear the truth from her lips, and the throne will be yours again." The geese pressed against her, their feathers rustling, their eyes gleaming like mirrors, and she realized with horror that she no longer knew whether Falada was guiding her or binding her. The meadow had grown strange. By the time the third dawn came after her first offering of blood to Falada, the grass was no longer the bright green of spring. It was dulled, mottled with patches of grey, and the air smelled faintly of iron. The geese were restless beyond reason, their hissing constant, their eyes luminous under the pale light of morning. The princess felt it in her bones. The air itself was heavier, as though the castle and yard were breathing around her, waiting. Falada's whispers had grown urgent, almost desperate. "More," he urged her each night. "More blood. Skin for skin, blood for blood." She tried to resist, but the weight in her chest, grew heavier with each day. The knife at her waist had become a fixture of her dress, her shadow trailing it wherever she went. Even her dreams were invaded now, dreams of geese circling her, with faces that were neither bird nor human, of whispers curling through feathers like smoke. The false bride walked the halls with silk and pride. The prince had begun to watch her less, turning instead toward distant hunts and feasts. But she could feel his presence when she tended the geese. His eyes were there, in the hush of the yard, in the way the geese bent their necks toward her. One morning, she awoke to find Falada's head gone from the gate. Her breath caught for a moment. She thought she had dreamt his whispers, that the madness had claimed her entirely. But then she heard it, a sound deep and low, rising through the morning air, a voice. "Princess." She froze. The voice came not from the gate, but from the geese. They were gathered in the far corner of the meadow, their heads low, bodies shifting in unison. The voice came again, deeper now, hollow, as though it were carried through the marrow of their bones. Skin for skin, blood for blood. Her knees buckled. She fell to the grass, her hands clutching her throat. The geese moved toward her, not in the careless shuffle of beasts, but with a deliberate, unnatural patience. Their honking was gone, replaced by a low hiss that filled her mind. She stumbled back toward the castle, her mind a storm of fear and confusion. Falada's voice followed her. "Do you see? They are mine. They are my voice. Feed me through them, and I will give you your crown again." She could not stop the tears. Her pride, her dignity, her name, all stolen. But she could not bring herself to hurt the creatures before her, no matter what the whispers promised. That night, she lay in her straw bed, listening to the geese outside. The hissing was constant now, a living sound that pressed through the walls. Falada's voice was stronger too, more insistent. "Princess, you must decide. Skin for skin, blood for blood. The choice is yours." The choice weighed on her with every breath. She went to the meadow the next day with the knife in her hand, but she did not touch the geese. They pressed close, their eyes unblinking, their feathers glimmering faintly like dark silver under the sun. She saw them differently now, not as animals, but as something caught between worlds, something belonging to Falada. She thought of her mother's charm, still hidden in her palm. She thought of the silver cup, still filled with water no matter how often she drank. And she thought of Falada's promise, that if she fed him, she would have her crown again. But she also thought of the price. The prince came to her in the meadow that afternoon. He did not speak at first. He simply watched her tend the geese, his eyes following her every motion. The geese stirred under his gaze, their hissing low and unnatural. At last he spoke. "You do not speak," to anyone of what is here," he said quietly. "Why?" She did not answer, the knife pressed in her palm, cold and heavy. He stepped closer. "There is something wrong. I can feel it." Her heart pounded. "I cannot explain." "You must," he said, his voice low. "If you are a princess, then you must tell me." The geese moved closer, their beaks flicking the air. Falada's voice filled her head. "Do it. Feed me. Then all will be yours." She trembled, unable to speak. The prince watched her with suspicion, but did not press further. He turned away, but before he left, he said, "Do not let them claim you." The words stayed with her long after he disappeared into the castle. That night, Falada was louder than ever. His voice filled the air like a storm. "Princess," he said, "you cannot hide forever. The blood is mine by right. The throne is yours by price. Skin for skin, blood for blood." The geese pressed closer to her door, hissing softly. She could hear their breath. She could smell the iron of their hunger. She wept. Her knife fell to her lap. She wanted to speak to the prince, to tell him everything, but she feared the false bride's wrath. She feared Falada's curse. She feared what she might become. By dawn, she had made her choice. The meadow was empty when she stepped out. The geese waited for her in a silent circle, their heads bent low. Falada's voice came like a tide. "Princess, it is time." She knelt among them, her knife in her hand. She pressed it to her palm, drew it across her skin, just enough for blood to fall. A single drop landed in the grass. The geese bowed their heads, their feathers trembling. The air changed. Falada's voice rose above them, a sound like wind and stone. "Yes, it is enough. I grow stronger." The ground beneath her feet seemed to shift. The geese pressed closer, their breath warm against her skin. Then she heard it. Not a hiss, but a voice. A single, terrible voice. "The throne is yours." Her breath caught. Falada's head appeared before her, not hanging from the gate, but floating in the air, glowing faintly with a pale light. His eyes were bright as embers. "You have fed me," he said. "The price is paid. The throne is yours again." She rose, trembling. "And the geese?" "They are mine," Falada said, "and they are yours." The truth fell upon her like a blade. To take her crown, she had given herself to the curse. The geese were no longer mere birds. They were his voice, his eyes, his hunger. She understood then that the choice was not hers to make. The geese moved forward, closing around her. Their feathers brushed her skin like cold silk. Falada's voice whispered one last time, deep and endless. "Skin for skin, blood for blood. Now you are mine." The crown was placed upon her head, but her reflection in the silver cup was no longer her own. It was the Goose Girl.